Hello to all the debt warriors listening, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie Fata. I want to start off by wishing everyone a happy new year. With the start of a new year means the start of a new tax season. I thought it would be an awesome idea to have an episode about preparing for tax season because there are some common questions about tax season that come up that many young people don't know the answer to. Whether you work one full-time job, you're self-employed, or you're juggling multiple jobs, you're going to have to do taxes. In today's episode, I'll be talking to Susan Allen. Susan is a CPA and the senior manager of the tax division at the AICPA. Susan is super knowledgeable about all things taxes. Susan and I will be discussing when tax season starts, how to file your taxes, when taxes are due, and much more of your tax season questions. Now, let's get to my interview with Susan. Hi, Susan. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm excited to have you here as well. So, Susan, you're a CPA at the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. So I thought you'd be an awesome person to talk to in preparation for the upcoming tax season. So I guess to start, when does tax season usually start?
Well, that's a great question. So the IRS recently announced that it will start accepting and processing individual tax returns on Friday, February 12th. That is a little bit later than in previous years when tax season usually started sometime towards the latter part of January. Now, the IRS is saying that the delay in time is really needed for extra programming and testing of their systems because there were some tax law changes that were enacted later in the year. So they need a little time to get all of that situated to correctly process the returns coming.
Has it ever started this late before in recent years, or is it usually January?
It's usually January, so this is a little bit later than in most years.
Right. Okay, so my next question is, what is the minimum income level required to file taxes? And what about a summer job for a Gen Zer who's in high school still and only working a summer job, or in college and only working a little part-time job?
Sure, that's another great question. Well, the minimum income level will depend on your filing status and your age. For tax year 2020, for example, that minimum for a single filing status person, someone who's not married, and under age 65, that threshold is $12,400. So if your income is below that amount, you generally wouldn't have to file a return. And I think a great resource is to check the instructions to the Form 1040. There is a very clear section that says, do you have to file? And it can spell out the exact thresholds and such should you have to file. But I would keep in mind there are reasons why even if you aren't required to file, you may want to file and may benefit you to file. For example, let's take that summer job. Maybe they didn't have to file. They made less than the threshold, but they withheld some federal income tax that they would be entitled to a refund. So even though they may not have to file, they should file to get a refund of some taxes paid.
Yeah, that's good to know. So we talked about the tax return a little bit. So how do you know if you have to file a tax return?
Yeah, so again, it depends on that income level and age, like we just chatted about. But you could look at the 1040 instructions and see that exact threshold. And if you're under that amount, you won't have to. If you're above it, you will. But again, there could be reasons that you should file for maybe getting a refund, even if you aren't required to file.
Right. So how would you even go about filing taxes in general? Where could someone even start?
Yeah, well, there are many ways that you could file your taxes. Of course, CPAs and tax professionals can help you prepare and file returns. They can also help you with, guidance and advice on your full financial picture. But you could also prepare them using various online softwares. Lots of software packages have available that you could use to file your own returns. And I'll also note that the IRS has some free e-file options. If your income falls below their threshold, want to say that threshold is 72,000. You can search on irs.gov for there's a free file fillable forms, and then you can see if you qualify to use those options to file your returns. There's also a program that I'm not sure everyone's aware of. It's the IRS's VITA program, which stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, and it's a really neat service that if your income falls below a threshold, or you're a special person with a disability, or English speaking, you don't speak English, they've got some support there. But in general, if your income falls below a threshold, I want to say that threshold is 57,000 for tax year 2020. They will help you prepare and file your returns for free. I actually was a site manager at a local VITA center. It was at a local library close to my home, and it was a really beautiful experience where I got to help our community file a lot of tax returns. And it's a free service that not everyone knew about, but they were also grateful when we could help them file the returns right then and there. We e-filed their federal and state returns, just part of the IRS's VITA program.
Yeah, that is an awesome free service. I'm definitely going to put the information for that in the description of this podcast so everybody can get it if they need to.
Yeah, you definitely should. I think it's a great service, and there's a link on the IRS website where you can search for your local VITA centers.
Oh, that makes it super easy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what about a person who wants to do their own taxes? Can someone do their own taxes? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, well, sure, they could do their own taxes. And for some taxpayers, that might make a lot of sense. A lot of folks, they just have a fairly simple W-2. They work for an employer, they get their W-2. It's just a little bit of, income they earn, withholding they made, and fairly straightforward to file. There's lots of online options available, and the ones that we just discussed too that could easily help you file your own tax returns. Now, you might run into situations when you have more complications on your returns, you need guidance, you're just not quite sure about a deduction or a credit or how to handle something. Sometimes it gets a little more complicated if you're self-employed and you're wondering, well, how do I take the home office deduction, or does it apply to me? And you start having bigger questions. So then it might make more sense for them to hire some extra support to give them that guidance, not only on their tax return, but on their full financial picture. And a CPA is excellent to help with those types of services.
Yeah, so that's a situation when you should maybe seek help to do your taxes. And also, what would be another situation a person can find themselves in when they should maybe seek help for their taxes, and where can they find help?
Yeah, so whenever you have a question about your tax situation, or you're not sure, if this is right or not, then it's good to seek extra guidance and support. I mean, our goal is to file an accurate, timely tax return. So if we're not sure of the correct treatment, then by all means, we should seek a little extra guidance. And there's lots of places that have some guidance for you. Of course, you can always hire someone, and that is beneficial in certain situations. But the IRS also has a lot of guidance on their website. The IRS publications, they have frequently asked questions. They even have some videos to help folks. So, I would take advantage of that resource too, because a lot of questions can be answered that way. And you really can't even downplay reading the instructions to the forms you're about to file. That often answers a lot of questions. So, seek help. If you don't know the answers, use the resources available at your fingertips, many of which are online, and hire someone if it gets a little too complicated and you need that extra support.
Right. I think some people might not even realize that the information is so readily available to them. So it could definitely help them. So I'll definitely put all that information in the description of this podcast so everyone can get it. So when someone's ready to file their taxes, what documents do they need on hand?
Yeah, well, for starters, you'll need your personal information. Your social security number, your spouse's social security number, if you are married, your dependents information, if you have dependents, and then you'll need all of your income information. If you're a W-2 employee, you'll need that W-2. If you receive 1099s, if you're an independent contractor, you might receive a 1099 NEC. If you have interest income or dividend income or capital gain income, any income you may have, you'll need all of that information, of course. A lot of those will come mailed to you. It often say important tax information on it. And then if you take deductions or credits, you'll need all of your substantiation that supports those items on the return. One thing that I always do at the start of every year, I have this file, very beginning of the year, I have it, 2020, or now it will be 2021 tax documents, and I just throw them all in there as they come in. If I, receive an information statement, it goes right into the file. If I, bought something that could potentially qualify for a deduction, I throw it in the file. So I consolidate it from the beginning, which helps because then it comes tax time and I just pull out that one file. It's all there. I'm really ready to get started.
That's such a great idea to consolidate it, because I feel like a lot of people might be looking everywhere for their files and everything, and they don't have it. So it's good to just put it in one place and make sure you know where you have it.
Right. Because I think things are going to come in at different times, and some are going to come in January, some in February, some in March. You might have a purchase in November, and you kind of just need that organized spot. And I put it in there, and I don't give it too much thought until it's time to file my taxes. But I just sort of have my system that works for me. And everyone has a different system, but
I think that's great.
Simple file started can help with that process. You have it all ready to go, whether you prepare it yourself or give it to a preparer. It's just all ready right there for you.
Yeah, it's always good to keep your finances organized, especially for your taxes. So, does someone need to claim their side hustle on their taxes? I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but I want to go into detail.
Yeah. So more and more taxpayers are certainly having that side income. And yes, you would report that income. And, for some, it can be a surprise at tax time when potentially they owe and they weren't expecting that because they didn't pay estimated taxes. So it's definitely important to keep in mind all of the income that you earn throughout the year when you think about your taxes.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about when tax season starts, but when our taxes due, is that usually the same day every year? I know last year was different, but.
Yeah, so, it's typically April 15th, unless it falls on a weekend or holiday or something like that. But tax returns for individuals they usually are due April 15th. There are some exceptions, and of course, last year was unprecedented in multiple ways, but in general, April 15th is the due date. And there are other due dates throughout the year. For example, if you pay estimated taxes, you'll pay those quarterly.
Right. So that's going to be the same this year, even though it's starting later, right?
Right. April 15th is still the due date right now.
Okay, awesome. So what if you can't afford to pay the taxes you owe? What happens then?
Yeah, another great question. So the IRS has many types of payment agreements that can help. A common one is what they call an installment agreement. It's a fairly straightforward agreement where you will pay monthly payments. They have other arrangements that could potentially qualify for a taxpayer. There are short-term extensions if you just need a little bit extra time. There are longer extensions where they'll basically put you on a longer collection hold if you've proven there's more hardship involved. And they even have what they call an offer in compromise, which you could potentially, if you qualify, settle your debt for less than the amount owed. So there's lots of different potential options, and you would have to provide certain financial information, kind of prove your case to the IRS, and there's forms and such. But for the average taxpayer, an installment agreement is most likely their best option, and it's fairly straightforward. Often you don't even have to provide that much information, and you can do those online through the IRS's online payment agreement. So I definitely keep the installment agreement approach in mind first, but there are other options, that for certain folks they could qualify for, and they can keep those in mind. And states have other arrangements, so if you end up owing state taxes to you, could look at your specific state rules and guidance to see what plans they may have in place.
But there are options for people if they can't afford to pay. That's
definitely options, and they're not alone. And there are many people that are having hard times, and there are options for payment agreements. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. So how long should someone keep their tax documents? Because,
Yes.
because people may keep them longer than they think to cause clutter. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, so what I tend to live by, I keep my tax returns that I file really forever. I like having that historical document of the filed tax return. It's helpful because when you file your future tax returns, it's nice to pull on some of the historic information. In the event you may have to amend a return, that's helpful. But now in terms of all the documentation and support, I don't keep that forever. At a minimum, you should keep it for 3 years, but there are instances that the IRS could come back and audit more years than that. So there's instances where you may want to keep it 6 or more years. I think a fairly conservative number is 6 to 7 years for the books and records associated with the tax returns. And then I keep the tax returns filed longer than that.
Is there anywhere online where you could pull that information too, just in case your information, or no?
Are you referring to like the information maybe that the IRS advises?
Yeah.
There's actually there's a page on irs.gov. I want to say it's literally called "How long should I keep records on irs.gov?" They answer several of these questions with their recommendations, and they'll spell out like 3 years in this instance, 6 years in this instance. Okay. So there definitely is, and if it's helpful, I can send you that link to make sure
awesome.
Your audience as well.
Yes, I will definitely put that in the description as well of this podcast. So is there anything else you think that the listeners need to know about preparing for the upcoming tax season?
Well, I would just say that, I wish everyone luck, and that it's definitely still an unprecedented time, and I hope that everyone stays healthy and well and has a good start to their tax season. Should they need help, there's so many awesome resources out there, so never hesitate to reach out. Look for the guidance on irs.gov. Look for the guidance that's available around you. Hire someone when needed. That can be a great support sometimes, and they can help you with things even more than your taxes. So, use the resources at your fingertips. And I definitely appreciate the opportunity that you allowed me to talk to your audience. And I wish everyone a very safe and healthy, happy year. Happy tax season.
Well, Susan, thank you so much. You definitely answered all my questions I have for preparing for tax season. So once again, thank you for being here with me today and talking to the listeners.
You're very, very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you so much for answering all the questions for me.
Everyone has to do taxes if they're employed, so I feel my chat with Susan will be beneficial to not only millennials and Gen Zers, but everyone who's listening. This year, tax season starts on February 12th, as Susan said, and you must have your taxes in by April 15th. So after listening to this episode, you'll have plenty of time to get your taxes completed. If you're worried about not being able to pay your taxes, you can reach out to the IRS, like Susan said, and they can help you and give you options for how to pay your taxes with monthly payments. If you're a Gen Zer with a summer job or a small part-time job and make enough money, you'll also have to pay taxes. I think what Susan said about keeping all of her tax documents in a file is a great tool to help everyone keep all of their tax documents in order. Like Susan said, some paperwork for your taxes may come at different times. Instead of just putting them on a desk or somewhere that could get lost, invest in a folder, and as soon as you get paperwork for your taxes, put that document in there so you can ensure it doesn't get lost. If you have any more questions about tax season that Susan and I didn't discuss today, feel free to reach out to us on social media and we can get you in contact with Susan or the AICPA and they can help you out. I'll put all of Navicore's social media handles in the description of this podcast as usual. So with that being said, that's the end of another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, millennials, Gen Zers, and everyone else listening. Bye.